hello for anybody that's already joined. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes, start probably at 2 past the hour. Everything okay with the slides there, Doral?
I see them perfectly fine. I hope everyone else does too. And yeah, if anyone wants to drop a hello, we have a chat function at the very right bottom where you can, yes, somebody is already typing. So where we could say
Excellent.
hello, where you can also ask questions. So either one, the questions are more like, yeah, ask a real question. If it's ongoing just during my talking and Brock's and my talking, just also use the chat. Whatever is fine, whatever suits you better.
For sure. And just again, for anyone joining, just going to give it one more minute for people to join in.
Yeah, it's still going up, so there should be still people joining in.
Mhm. Okay, well, we've been holding in stable for the last, I'd say 30, 40 seconds. So why don't we crack on? Hello and welcome everybody to our technically third installment in the Compliance Masterclass for HR. The first one was our overview. The second one was our bit on Social Security. And today we will be talking about the EU Posted Workers Directive. Something that is highly, highly important and can only continue in its importance as the unified border tracking systems come into play. But we will get to that. Do want to say at the top of the call here, there is a whole lot of information that we'll be sharing. And because we really want this masterclass to be for you, the people who are attending, and want to have actual real practical advice that you can take and use. If anyone has any questions, please try to front load them in as soon as you can, because we'd really like to get back to you with, yes, of course, Claudine, the recordings and documentation for all sessions can be available. We'll follow up with you after. But because we will be following up with all the recordings and documentation, we would love to be able to take your questions in real time. So as you can see, there are people in the chat function today. We won't be throwing up any polls or questions. So please just pop your messages in the chat function and we will try to get to them as best we can. And of course, if we don't get to them in the session, we will take care of it afterwards. So as always, we'll start with a quick introduction. We'll go through what the PWD is, why it's important, and then some recommendations and actionable things to do. Over to you, Doro.
Thank you very much, Brooke. Yeah, good morning, everyone, or nearly good afternoon here. I'm Dorothy Schweigart. I'm the Director of Compliance Research Center at WorkFlex, been in global mobility 25 years now. Classical start with a big four, been with a big assignment team, smaller companies, and am now for 2 years now responsible with the team for designing our logic, for designing all to-dos. When does compliance want what? And that's what I'm trying to explain today.
Fabulous. And as always, I'm Brock Dale, a Canadian living in Barcelona, coming up on 16 years in travel. I come from a background of airlines and travel management companies, have emigrated from Canada to Spain, to the UK, and back to Spain. So I like to say that I've been on the giving and the taking side of international travel compliance. And I head up our UKI and general Northern European revenue and operations here at WorkFlex, and excited to be moderating the session today, moderating, chatting, I don't know. It'll be mostly you today, Doro, as the resident expert. Although I've had my share of conversations on our wonderful Posted Workers Directive. So let's start with what is the PWD?
Exactly.
Back over to you, Doro.
Thank you very much. Yeah, what is the PWD? The PWD is easiest to understand a little bit from the past how this came up. So when Europe opened itself, we had a lot of different levels of salaries, of security for people, social security. So that meant cross-border services were always not really comparable. So the European old countries said, okay, we somehow need to make this comparable because we also have to protect not only the people providing services coming in, but also our local markets, because that's not really what is intended to be with a European market, that somebody who has lower home levels can go to another country and of course get a lot of revenue there because they can act at a lower income level. So they drafted the Posted Workers Directive for all European, well, all EU countries, and said, okay, we have some standards that you have to comply with when you are working in another country. First of all, to make sure everyone is kind of at the same level, starting calculating prices, and also meaning, okay, and all people serving in this service provision working have the same level of security to themselves, meaning work the same hours so that no one, if there's a standard working time of, let's say, 8 hours a day, you shouldn't come in with people working 16 hours a day because you don't have that security at home or that law. So that was the goal. That's what they did. That's what they drafted. And then they said, okay, now we have the rules. How can we make sure that the employers that do cross-border service provision comply with those laws? Well, I can tell them, I can say, yeah, please don't do this. So what do we do when someone drives the road and you say, yeah, it's 50 kilometers an hour, and yeah, so you can say, don't drive faster. How can you make sure? Well, if you control. So how can you control service provision? Well, you have to know who's providing services in your country. So the different countries created different ways how they would be notified of services provided. So, and this is something that's very important. Yeah, we can go to the next slide.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's very important that every country, they all adapted these rules. They all adapted the mindset and said, yes, we want that. But every country kind of got their own tweaks to it. And then the EFTA countries said, oh, we like that idea. We also do that with even more different tweaks, like Switzerland and Norway. And so we have all different requirements, we have all different rules, we have all different portals, but it's all the same basic rule in the European base, and it's all the same idea. So yeah, but that's just what happens when you give somebody an overall goal and everybody does their own thing. So but
basically,
yeah,
EU baseline with country-specific refinements, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know
Exactly.
from
So, and
some of
this
the
is what made it so big, but it's so important that you know what to do where and when, in what case. So the thing is, it's doable. What happened? So Germany,
it
yeah,
was
we can
just
go to
before
the
that.
next. Yeah.
Well, let's crack on and have a look at some specifics in some of these countries, but also just wanted to remind the folk that are watching that if anyone has any questions, to please pop them in the chat so that we can get to them during the session. And yes, of course, we will share the recordings after the call. So let's have a look at some of the specifics. I know there's lots of differences to look at here.
Yes. So, of course, every country has their own law that kind of is the adaptation of the Posted Worker Directive. So, Germany has a special posting act and has created a Proof of Employment Act for the Germans, the Nachweisgesetz, which is a direct result of the Posted Worker Directive.
Mm-hmm.
And Germany has some of the most special rules because we don't want to know all German, service provision in Germany. We only want to know in special areas like construction, nursing care, the ones where you typically await a little bit of more, where you diverse cost calculations with other base salaries, other methods of who's working where. So Germany said, yeah, we are not caring about the standard provision of services. We focus on those main branches. France had a portal, and they even gave it a nice name. Like in Germany, we don't have a name for the portal, but France has the SIPSI portal because they use it for like everything. And so this is used to show all the service provision in France. And here it's actually all the service provision. Austria have actually really called their law wage and social dumping prevention. So they're very direct what they want to prevent. Italy has also a portal that they use for a lot more, the Click Lavoro. And as I said, EFTA states has similar regulations. In Switzerland, everybody knows about the 90 days of services provided and all that. So yeah, as this is super complex, we have created a cheat sheet, meaning showing you, okay, in this country, it's this and that portal. And as far as I know, the team will send a download link if you're interested in the cheat sheet.
Yes, we'll send a link to everybody who's attended or registered the session today.
Exactly.
We've created a cheat sheet specifically for this series of webinars. So the first few pages are kind of a recap on all things to know about PWD, and then it's that specific breakdown for each of the 31 member states.
Yes.
Great question,
Claude. The cheat sheet includes all EU countries, of course. It includes the method in all of the countries and the basic information for that. Okay, perfect. Great. All right.
So why do we need to care?
Exactly. So like I said, okay, so we actually still need to do it to prevent wage dumping. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you have a high-level service provider, let's say, your CEO who's going to Switzerland talking about wage dumping. Well, it is still, the comparison to the local one. And if you pay him less, it's a form of wage dumping, even though we don't think about that much. So basic line is, of course, fair competition. I said that, and uphold and protect the workers. So because those are the people that are also like on a temporary base in that country and will face those spending patterns there. They will need a little bit more money because they're on business trip. So yeah, that makes sense to know how do the locals get paid to ensure that they are on a same level. So that's always the basis.
Would you say that there might also be an aspect of just knowing who's in the country and doing what behind the legislation as well as another stopgap or fail-safe?
I don't think I completely... Was that a question? No.
Kind of a question, but it's all right. So, of course, these things do differ based on the conditions per country, which again we'll reference in the cheat sheet here. But what are some of the general local rules that apply when somebody's on site in the host country?
Exactly. So the first thing is, of course, payment. I mean, because that's actually the base thing that makes the service provision expensive, and that enables the person to live like a local. So in some countries, it's only minimum wage. In some countries, it's equal pay. So it's important to know in which country I go to. So Switzerland, clearly equal pay. Also, Austria focuses on equal pay. Germany, as focusing only on branches, will focus on minimum wage because those are branches where we have a lot of minimum wage. Now, if your home minimum wage is less than the German because they keep raising the level, then you have to meet at least minimum wage because the minimum wage is designed to make it at least through a day. So if your employee doesn't even get that minimum wage, yeah, he or she will probably not make it through the day, even though you might feed him and house him. Yeah, that's just not designed how it's supposed to do. Same for working hours and rest period. Just imagine a country that would countrywide go back to 30 hours per week. And you send somebody in who, with overtime, could work 50 hours per week. Now, imagine you are repairing a production line, and everyone goes after 7 hours a day, well, even less, 6 hours a day, and your employees stay 4 more hours in work. That doesn't really match. And it doesn't match what we want to do. So same for vacation. However, for short-term business trips, the vacation usually doesn't fall into that. But safety, for example, if you send someone pregnant to a country where pregnant people are not allowed to work, well, then you shouldn't do that because, they can decide, host country can decide on the rules. Health standards, that's a lot of also vaccination rules, of course, that kind of makes sense when you enter a country and that country wants something specific that you comply with that. Accommodation requirements, that is actually something that also comes directly from doings from service providers. You need to comply with some basic standards. You can't just put them in a house with one bathroom if they're all colleagues, because that wouldn't match what you normally want to do. Of course, expenses and allowance regulations. If you send someone on business trip, I said that they should at least be able to, go out at night with the colleagues to have a beer and not have any leftover money at all because it's so expensive there. And of course, collective agreements, sector-specific rules. This is all that's what applies when you're working in a country because that's what it's designed for.
Exactly. We've just got a question in here from Jenny. Does the employee whose job is mainly repairing things for the client, should they also follow these rules when they're being sent to different EU countries? So
Ah,
I think I understand the question, Jenny. And yes, if they are going in and doing technical work, whether that's installation, post-sale maintenance, what have you, they will have to comply with each host country's regulations, depending on what those are and what country they're going to. If you have any clarifications you could put there, that'd be useful. But perfect, that addresses that. So it's a lot of stuff to have to consider there, eh, Doro?
Exactly. Very important, especially for repairing. A lot of
Mm,
times, repair and maintenance has to go in when there's no production. So, of course, if production is until Saturday, let's say noon, repair and maintenance would go in Saturday afternoon and work on Sundays as well. In a lot of countries, you have to have a specific confirmation that you are allowed to perform work on Sunday. So this is something that you have to keep in mind as well. So also in Germany, you can't just tell a worker to work on Sunday. That has to be a special procedure to it. In Switzerland, you need a special confirmation from the authorities, for example. So
sure.
of course, you can always, if you can have an arguing, if you can argue why you're doing that, you can apply with the authorities for a special, confirmation that you can
Sure.
do it.
We've got a question from Tina, which I think we'll get to in a couple of slides. So
Exactly.
stay tuned for that. And so is this registration required? This kind of ties into your question, Tina, and we'll elaborate as we continue going forward.
Exactly. So actually, most countries, I wouldn't say all, but most countries really do go back to the Posted Worker Directive that clearly said only for posted workers. So what does a posting mean? The posting doesn't mean it's an assignment, it's a secondment. The posting means I'm sent by my employer to provide a service. So providing a service means that I do something where usually you get payment for. You cannot say if it's not getting paid, it's not a service, because pro bono work is, of course, a service. If it's in a guarantee work, it's of course a service. If you have a frame contract, it's of course a service. But like if I go on a meeting just to have an exchange, internal exchange, no work for a client, no service provision. But can there be service provision in a affiliated company arrangement? Of course, if there is some kind of payable, in theory, payable service. So if I have a centralized IT group that does rollouts and they go as a group to Spain, to Italy, to Romania, to Norway, of course, all these are service provisions. If they meet up, because all of them don't sit in one country, if they just meet up to do internal strategic work, no, that would not be providing services, because there's no one outside. There's no service recipient. So the easiest thing, when is it a posting, is when there's somebody receiving my services. So if I meet now with Brock in Barcelona and we together work for a client, even if the client's not there, but if there is actually a third person recipient
Entity,
of
yeah.
our services, then it's a service provision. Then we need a registration. So that's the difference. So business meetings, usually if it's internal and no work for a client, then it can be exempt. Seminars, very difficult. Am I the one doing the seminars? I'm providing a service today. So that would actually be, in some of the countries, would be to be registered. It's not the same in all countries. That's why I say
Exactly.
Conferences, the same. Going to a conference, only getting input. Of course, I'm not providing services, but being the one talking might be to be registered.
Or if you're providing demos of equipment, especially looking at folks in construction, engineering, manufacturing, if you're doing demos at your stand, some countries, Sweden jumps to mind in that case, as one of the ones that does want to have that taken care of. So Jenny, they all need A1 certificates, no matter if it's only business meetings. Why is it always taking much longer to get one in Sweden? So yes, PWD and A1 are different things, but there is always the day one implication for somebody traveling to another country to take care of work provisions. Doro can speak to maybe some of the differences in the home country receiving protocols, but I could speak to the UK, where you can theoretically travel based on the provisions of the bilateral treaties with proof of submission for the application. However, HMRC is currently taking between 2 and 5 months to actually return the A1 certificate to British nationals or people working in the UK. Dora, do you have any specifics on Sweden or lead times for that right now?
Yeah, it's kind of like the same. We are facing the same issues, but the A1 is not the PWD. So the A1 is Social Security. The PWD is provision of services. So the A1 you need as soon as you cross the border. The PWD you need as soon as it's a posted worker, meaning services are provided. Looking at the clock, we might need to
Jump
move
along
on.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So quick one here, because I know that we have some of our UK friends here. Given that Brexit is now a reality, how does this apply to UK-based businesses sending people to the continent, rather?
Exactly. So currently, and that's, I know UK clients don't like that much, but it's a good thing when you are treated like the Europeans, because you only have to do the PWD registration and get a new one. So it's still required in most countries. Where it's not, you see the list: Netherlands, Ireland, Italy, Spain, Austria, Estonia, and Czech Republic. But as it is not possible to just come in with the Schengen visa you have and provide services, you need a work permit for that. So that means UK people going into the Netherlands, since they can't register their services, they need to get paperwork for provision of services. So that's,
Yeah.
it's not the good thing. The good thing is where you can still use all the portals.
And there are a few of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. So this
so
one you can read when you get it.
yeah.
That's the whole summary of what I said.
Mhm.
There is quite some consequences and penalties. So we saw this live in Austria. We saw it in Denmark. We saw it in France in clients before
Belgium
they
as well.
became clients. Yeah.
Quick one on why it isn't required for the countries listed for UK businesses.
Because it's an intra-EU regulation, and those countries just took out the UK from the regulations and said, no, they are not coming as a European in the Europe free movement. So we want a work permit, because the provision of services is not covered after breakfast.
Brexit.
Oh my goodness.
Brexit after breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not, so after Brexit, there is no free movement for UK service provisions. Exactly.
I feel you, Tati. It's they don't make
I'm
it easy on
sorry.
us.
Okay.
And I think another interesting thing here is the future with what they're hoping to move towards with a single EU digital portal with the European Commission.
Yeah,
what's the situation here?
exactly. So the EU declared a lot of times ago that they want one portal, because, you will have the cheat sheet, you will have it easier. You might have first talks with Workflex who can help you on a click, but the EU said, okay, let's make this easier. Let's make one portal. Now, the thing is, they built the portal. They have it on a system that they want to use for many intra-country things, the IMI, but and it's supposed to be used for that. It will go live. That's on the second page. It will go live January 26th. It was supposed to be live this year. It didn't work. So they said it's optional. So a lot of countries, I mean, just imagine Belgium, they have their nice portal. They gave it a super nice name, Limosa. They have the portal for more than 25 years. They will not give that up unless forced. France, they have a nice name. It's a SIPSI portal. Why should they give that up? And so right now, it is stated that the Czech portal is actually supposed to be that IMI portal, in just to test it out. Nobody knows if that's true. And yeah, so if member states want to participate, they must replace their national portals. We have not yet heard who is really going to do that. I know a lot of global mobility specialists says, yeah, it will be super, but the countries don't think it will be super, because nobody is like, yeah, we're going to be the first on the IMI portal, because I don't know if they don't trust. I have not talked to the EU. So yes, there might be a future. I probably won't see it in my time still working. I want to retire in about 13 years. So let's see. So there's another question. Integrating PWD compliance into existing HR workflows without slowing down. Yeah, that's a good question. So I might turn that over to you, Brock. It's probably easier, right?
Yeah, I
What's
mean,
that?
knowing what you need to know, and I guess on the light side of that would be having a look at the cheat sheet that we're going to provide you to really understand what the applications and realities are of the countries where you're sending people, or without turning this into a full sales pitch, looking at some companies out there like us here at Workflex who are able to ingest all this information and all that data and give you actual, real, actionable advice on what the provisions and requirements are. And then in cases like ours, actually automating that notification process across all 31 member states. Um, if anyone has any questions on how we do that in a bit more detail, of course, we're happy to take that offline. Tina, I think we'll get back to your question on who's been fined so far. It's a pretty extensive list, and some countries actually operate a name and shame situation, where I believe it's Switzerland has a publicly available list of fees, fines, and penalties, and the companies that they've been associated to. But we can give that to you after. Michael, also, we not necessarily a cheat sheet for A1s, as they're very different depending on the host country, but we will follow
No,
up
no,
for
no,
more
no, no.
information there. Oh,
They're
go
always
ahead.
the same depending on home.
Pardon me. Yes, of
So
course.
an A1 you always apply in your home country to your home
Social
authorities.
Security, yeah.
So exactly to the Social Security authorities. So there's a German portal, there's an Austrian portal, there's a Swiss portal. In the UK, it's not a portal; it's a
Online web.
sheet-based
Yeah.
online process. So there's actually not a cheat sheet because it depends on where your company is paying Social Securities for your employees. So that would be easier if you would reach out to us. And I think that's the next slide, right?
We've
Oh,
got
no,
one
this is
more,
supposed to be
just talking
one more.
about our next session, because we are coming up to time here. But our fourth installation will be on work permits and visas. So making sure that you're preventing illegal work situations abroad, which will be on Wednesday, November 26th, same time, same platform. And we will share the registration link shortly in the chat. But then, as Doro said, for anybody that has any questions that hasn't been popped in here directly, please follow up with us. There's the QR code, my email and telephone number. Would be happy to set up a chat, either to talk about PWD in general, or more specifically how Workflex and the team makes this easier for modern businesses by giving you not just the risk assessments, but also the actual document handling. We are now at 3 minutes over time, so I want to be respectful of everybody's day. So thank you very much from my behalf. Thanks for all the interactive questions here. Daro, any final closing thoughts?
Well, what I just want to say, please don't take this too lightly.
Yes.
This is really important. The countries know more and more who is where and doing what. They start looking at invoices and they know when a service provision has taken place. And so just rooting for compliance. Go ahead and be compliant.
Go forth and prosper, but also make sure you're doing it all above board, I think, is how we can leave you on that one. And if there's anything we can do to help you get through the murky waters of international compliance, we'd be most happy to speak with you. And with that, wishing you all a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, and we'll speak to you all very soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.